Welcome back to the channel 904 Strength Club, home of the strongest content coming out of Northeast Florida. Yeah, baby, 904. 904! Anyway, today we're going to talk about one of my favorite training principles, which is overload. Now, when I talk about overload, let me define very specifically what I mean. All right? When I say overload in this context, I am saying that you are exposing at least some portion of a lift to a greater than 1 rep max load, whether it be resistance or just weight. A greater than 1 rep max resistance. All right. It can be the top of the lift. It can be the bottom of the lift. It can be somewhere in between. Doesn't matter. Some portion of it. All right. When I think of overloading, I think of 2 different types of overloading that serve 2 different purposes. All right. The first one is the static overload, static holds. All right. 3 classic examples of what this looks like: walkouts on a squat or an overhead press, or unracking the bar on a bench and just holding it for, I like a 10 count. 1, 2, not a rush 10 count, just a reasonable 10 count. All right. What this does, and when I like to use these, is if I'm having a max effort day, if I'm on a max effort day and the weight just feels terrible to me, everything feels a lot heavier than it should, and I'm coming close to missing weights that I should be able to get, I like to maybe call the session a little bit early instead of missing a bunch of reps. If I was going for, let's say 225 on something. If I was going for, it wouldn't be 225. If I was going for 365 on my overhead and at 335, it just feels stupid. All right, I'll stop at 335 and then throw a plate on the outside. So I'm at 425 on the bar, unrack, hold, 10 seconds, put it back. I'll do that 4, 6, 8 times. And what I'm really trying to do is move that set point in my mind of what heavy is. All right. That's the only thing I can explain it as, is you are trying to, there's something in your mind that when you hit a certain weight, it goes, oh shit, that's heavy. Well, I'm trying to reallocate where that line is. All right. One other unique application of these is for your overhead press. If you are going to compete in strongman, and overhead press is something that you are going to compete in because you're in strongman, one of the things that you'll find is a lot of times, once you complete the clean and get in rack position, there's a timer going off, because if you start to breathe out in rack position, you will never get the brace that you first had. So there's a timer going off in your head of press, breathe, or drop, press, breathe, or drop. And sometimes you just need another 5 seconds to really be where you need to be to press. So one of the things that I've done recently, and was doing up until I ruptured my Achilles, was do my walkout on my overhead press, 5 count, breathe out enough to lose my brace, rebreathe, acquire the best brace I could, and then do another 5 count, put it back up. And I don't think that I will ever get to where I'll be able to press as much on that secondary brace as what I could have with the primary brace. But if I think of that primary brace, the everything perfect, I caught my wind right where I was supposed to, brace is perfect, and this is what I'm putting up, and this is what I'm putting up. If I have to rebreathe, I'm trying to just close this gap. All right. So in my mind, that's a drill. You don't even look at this as a specific exercise or movement. I look at this as more of a drill. It's not zapping a lot of energy out of you to do this. It's taking 5 minutes maybe, but it's a drill that will help move that set point. Now, the second variation of overload would be a dynamic overload, in which you are not just holding the weight, but you're actually moving it. Now, there's a million different ways to do this. All right, you can do partial range of motion. You can do accommodating resistance. You can do reverse bands. You can do weight releasers. You can do powerlifting gear. You can do a slingshot or a Titan Ram type device on your bench. There's a lot of different ways to do this. All right, so I don't want to say that this one's right, this one's wrong, or anything like that, because they will all give different stimuluses. What are stimuli? Let's nail the English. Stimuli. All right. A couple of guidelines that I would say is, well, just one big guideline I would say is, if you're doing reverse bands, the bar should not be weightless at the bottom of the movement. You still need resistance all the way through the movement. I got a little bit overzealous with reverse bands one time and rigged it up for an overhead press. And I went to take the weight out and it felt so light. And I actually just kind of let go of it gently. And the bar dropped like an inch maybe. And it was like, okay, that's way too much band on there. All right, so you don't, as you're doing this, especially if you're using bands, you want to be cognizant of the fact that at the bottom of the lift, you don't want the bar too light. You know, I've seen a lot of things on a 60-40 split with the weight, 60% bar and weight, 40% band at the top of the movement, and that way you're still moving 60% of the weight at the bottom of the movement. That's probably a fair split. That's probably not a bad place to start with. All right. On reverse bands, you probably want it to be to where you've still got about 60% of the resistance at the bottom of the movement. So with bands, they're a little bit less reliable because you got to play with them and really figure out, okay, on this movement, I need this band and it's going to give me this much. If I put 2 of these bands, it's going to give me this much. And you can't really nail it. You just kind of get in range. So if you're shooting for 60-40 and you find that you have 30% band assistance, resistance, whatever, at this portion of the lift where you want that 40%, that's probably close enough. All right. So that's overload. Now, the good thing is if you're programming a dynamic overload type movement into your program, you're still going to get some of the benefits of the static overload. You're not going to have a long hold most likely, but you are going to get the benefit of handling more weight at the top of the lift than what you are capable of handling unassisted. All right, or unoverloaded, however that's going. So anyway, that's overloads, a training tip, trick, hack, whatever you want to call it. Play around with it some. If you want to run, a 4, 6, 8 week cycle on some dynamic overloads and just kind of play around with it, see what that gets you, man. Give it a shot, knock yourself out. Part of this is about experimentation just as much as it is anything else, because you got to find out what works for you, what progresses you, and maybe you might find that by adding bands, you just blow up and you're able to bust plateau, or you might find that you don't like bands and you like chains, or you like weight releasers, or you like reverse bands, or whatever. Give it a shot, guys, and we'll catch y'all on the next video.